Hello, hello. Today I wanted to share something a little bit more personal on what the Lord has been working on in me. A lot of teaching and conviction with this one. So, this one is more about God's promises. And when God makes a promise, there's always a waiting period before the actual promise. In that time of waiting, there's a lot of waiting and pruning and character development and doubts and frustrations. Um, and I've been through all of that. But more specifically, something that I had just been kind of been wrestling through is when the waiting goes on for a while, a long time, and thinking to myself, well, maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe there's something more that I'm supposed to be doing in order to get the promise. Maybe it's because I keep messing up and I keep making this mistake and I keep taking matters into my own hands, and this is why the promise isn't coming. Because if only I were to do this harder, if I had more faith, if I tried harder, then maybe that's when the promise will come. But that is not how God works. And God was showing me the story of Abraham. So I'm going to go into that for a little bit. And God makes a covenant with Abraham in his old age, telling him that he is going to be the father of many nations. He is going to have a generation as numerous as the stars that he could see in the sky. And Abraham believed him. That's why it was counted to him as righteousness. That's why he is the father of our faith. So time goes on and nothing's happening. The offspring hasn't come yet. So they try to, Abraham and his wife Sarah, they try to take matters into their own hands. Sarah telling Abraham to sleep with his servant Hagar, and for the reason of, well, she's probably thinking, well, maybe it's because of me and I'm too old. You should sleep with my servant. She's younger. Maybe that's how God's going to fulfill the promise for you. Um, you could try it that way. Anyways, so he does. Abraham sleeps with her servant Hagar, and she has a son. But of course, Sarah gets jealous. Like, obviously, Sarah, sis, what do you expect? So then she kicks them out. Um, Abraham has a son from the servant. His name is Ishmael. But God confirms to Abraham that that was not the promise that he intended for him. That was basically Abraham trying to take matters into his own hands, because Abraham's offspring was supposed to come from Sarah. So I'm going to read chapter 17, verse 15. It says, "And God said to Abraham, As for Sarai, your wife you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she shall become nations. Kings of peoples shall come from her." Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said to himself, Shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abraham said to God, Oh, that Ishmael might live before you. God said, No, but Sarah your wife shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. So let's just talk about how good God is. Because God still blesses Abraham. He still keeps his covenant with him, but he also goes ahead and blesses his mistake, blesses him trying to take matters into his own hands, and God still uses that. And he says, "As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him and will make him fruitful and multiply him greatly. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year." So we fast forward a little bit, and Sarah basically overhears, and she laughs because she doubts, because she's old. And then verse 12 for chapter 18. So Sarah laughed out loud to herself, saying, "After I am worn out, and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure?" The Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? At that appointed time I will return to you, and this time next year Sarah shall have a son." So this just shows us exactly who God is, how God is. That God is a promise keeper, and when He makes a promise, it is going to happen. Whether or not we believe it, whether or not we try to take matters into our own hands and we make mistakes and we we fall, but God is like, this is my covenant with you, Abraham. This is my sealed covenant, meaning nothing can break it. God is not like man that can break promises. When God says yes, it's yes. When God makes a promise, it is going to happen. It's yes or yes. And for me, it was just like this reminder of, it doesn't matter what was in the past. It doesn't matter if I've tried to take matters into my own hands. It doesn't matter if I continue to mess up. It doesn't matter if I get frustrated with God, because He is still faithful. It's not a matter of my faithfulness, it's about His faithfulness. He is still faithful to complete His promises. And nothing surprises Him, nothing surpasses Him. Don't you think the God of the universe, the God that knows everything, the God that created you, and He knows you better than you know yourself, don't you think that when He had His plan mapped out, His plan for your life, that He wouldn't take into account your your mess ups, your detours, your faults, your shortcomings, that He wouldn't, that would just surprise Him all of a sudden? I think when it comes to His promises, um, it's like we're moving forward, but there's bumps along the ways, and maybe it's not a straight path, but we're still going to walk in it one way or another. And that was what happened with the Israelites, which were Abraham's descendants. And God rescues the Israelites out of Egypt. He takes them into the promised land. But in the in between, they are in the wilderness, but they're stubborn, and they are constantly being disobedient to the Lord. They're constantly whining and doubting and sinning. And because of that, it takes longer to get to the promised land. God still is going to take them there, but you might miss out on it. And maybe, it's for the generation after you. Maybe, like, for these Israelites, it was their children that got to see the promised land for most of these people. So, yes, our disobedience can prolong getting the promise, but the promise is still there. So even as you kind of read into, with Isaac's story and Jacob, and how God is just faithful to the covenant that He established with Abraham, and he continues to make promises to Isaac, to Jacob. And there's in Jacob's story to where Jacob also messes up, and he has his flaws and his mistakes. And God said to Jacob, he says, "Behold, I am with you, and I will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back into this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." So it's a promise for generations. So even regardless of what the generation does after you, like that's still, he is still faithful to complete his promise and his covenant. And that was so refreshing for me to see that even if it takes a long time, that it's still going to happen. And regardless of my own efforts, it's never going to be done by my own efforts. It's not going to be done by my works, but it's fully done by his works. And he just asks us to have faith and to just trust him, believe in him, and he is faithful to complete his promises.